Noah and Kate, Chapter 39. Noah usually liked these quiet nights at the station. No high adrenaline emergencies, no rousing himself from a much-needed sleep, no hosing down and disinfecting the ambulances for the 100th time that weekend. Even the washing machines were quiet. The scratchy blue linens were clean and neatly folded in their cubbies, patiently waiting to be called into action once more. Tonight, however, he could have used a little activity, something, anything, to take his mind off both his task at hand and the thoughts plaguing him. He was packing the last of his personal gear into a large black duffel, arranging and rearranging his clothes and toiletries without much caring why, because his mind was otherwise engaged. Every gray cell he possessed had been hijacked by relentless thoughts of Kate and their last time together at the cabin. It's not like he hadn't thought about that day in the loft bedroom before now, more like he hadn't been able to think about anything else. But tonight, one thought kept stabbing him with fresh, bright pain. Why hadn't he just told her? The moment had been perfect. They'd been about to make love with cooing words and tender expressions flowing so easily between them. All he'd had to do was say it. "Katie, I love you." Bam! Done! What the hell was wrong with him? Deep down, he suspected something he didn't want to acknowledge, something that was bubbling to the surface nonetheless. Was it possible he was actually afraid? He'd seen it all. He'd faced situations that would make most people run screaming. He wasn't afraid to crawl into burning cars or face knife-wielding psychos high on PCP. He wasn't afraid to be the difference between life and death for someone, or to hold a lifeless baby in his hands and gently force a tiny heart to beat again. He wasn't even afraid to give up everything he knew and start a new life in a far-off place where they spoke a language he'd flunked in high school, and where he'd see poverty and illness unlike anything he'd ever experienced. And yet, whispering 3 little words to Kate had frozen him to his core. Frozen. That's how he felt. Like trauma victims who shut down, like the extreme end of the fight-or-flight response. The blinking, unthinking paralysis that gripped someone who simply could not move, even though their life depended on it. He had simply been incapable of speech. And even when she'd taken his silence to mean he didn't care, even when she'd pretended to end things because she knew she could do better, he should have reached out for her, pulled her to him, kissed her and held her and opened his heart to her. It would have melted her. It would have melted him, but he had just stood there like a tool and let her go. And ever since, every time he got out his phone to call her or send her a text, every time he thought of going back to the cabin, every one of the 100 million times a day he thought about finding her wherever she was and begging her forgiveness, he choked. Without fail, he failed. He couldn't find the right words. He didn't know what to say or how to say it. He was afraid it would be too little, too late. Because maybe she had finally convinced herself that she deserved better than him. Maybe she'd finally come to believe that he wasn't long-term material, and that she could easily find someone who was. Someone who could be a real partner for her. Someone who could take life seriously and start making adulthood happen. Someone who could at least tell her how much he loved her, for God's sake. There was still time. He could go over there now, tell her how he felt, apologize, admit how lame he was at all this stuff, somehow find some way to tell her with actual words what she meant to him. Maybe he'd be gifted with eloquence in that moment and would finally find language for this feeling he had. Even if he had to stutter and stumble and spit it out, even if it came out all wrong, at least she'd know. He was tucking the last of his Spanish phrase books into his duffel when a meek, fluttery knock on the break room door made him freeze. Every muscle contracted and held. Even his heart seemed to stop for a second before roaring back to life with a heavy, thudding beat. "Yes?" he called, his mouth suddenly dry. His heart rate spiked even higher when the door began to creak open and revealed Lily Graham. He felt like a Jenga tower collapsing, as all at once the tension in his muscles dissolved and the wild rhythm of his heart began to slow. He blew out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding and turned back to his duffel. "Hi, Lily," he said flatly. "Can I come in for a sec?" she asked, and the coquettish lilt in her voice felt like a cheese grater against his skin. I'm just going over the last of my stuff for tomorrow," he said, gesturing to the bag on the bed. He left the sentence dangling, hoping that she'd take the hint. "Oh, great. So you're free." She closed the door behind her and pushed against it with her back until the handle clicked. She had dropped her chin to her chest and was looking up at him through lowered eyes and way too much mascara. "I just wanted to come and say goodbye. Properly." Noah let out a self-conscious laugh and turned his back to her, rearranging the socks he had just packed and rummaging through his t-shirts as if it was a vital part of the packing process. "Thanks, that was nice of you," he said. She, too, let out a little laugh. I don't think nice is exactly what I had in mind." "Oh, shit. What are you talking about?" He laughed uncomfortably. "You're always nice." She moved so silently that he didn't even hear her until she was right behind him, and by then it was too late. Small, unfamiliar hands ran up his back, hands that felt cold and awkward and so not Kate-like. He turned around to face her and had to block those same hands as they reached for his chest. "Lily, come on." He tried affability again. He held her wrists lightly and then, to his chagrin, felt her starting to squirm in his grasp. Good Lord, she was digging this. He dropped her wrists and tried to stand back, but the bunks stopped him from going anywhere. "Noah," she said, her voice all sultry, and what he could only guess was her attempt at seductive. "It's your last night. Haven't you ever been a little curious?" "About what?" he heard himself asking, though he knew perfectly well what. "About you and me." She stood up on her toes and whispered against his ear. How hot it would be. How mind-blowing it would be. Her breath was hot against his skin, and not the good kind of hot. He shied away from her, feeling every inch of her too-close presence, even though she was barely touching him. Her perfume was gassing him out, and everything about her just felt wrong, uncomfortable and strange and not Kate, and just wrong. "Lily," he said, a little petulantly. A thought occurred to him. "What about Carl, your boyfriend?" She shrugged. "We're not, exclusive. He's off in the city anyway, and I don't much care if he comes back." "Lily," he said more firmly this time, "you're a lovely girl, but I'm not looking to hook up." "I won't tell anyone." She didn't skip a beat. "It can be our little secret." "No, I don't think you understand. I'm not interested. I'm sorry." She paused, and her eyes roamed over his face for a moment before hardening into little dark beads, glittering in the low light. "Is it because of Kate?" she asked, all sultriness having vanished from her tone. Noah risked putting his hands on her shoulders and gently encouraged her to settle back down on her feet. She was taller than Kate, but he still felt ridiculously huge in front of her. If he could have pushed her all the way back out the door, he would have. Getting her to take one step back was victory enough. "No, it's just..." he tried, and then gave up. "Fuck it. Yes, it's because of Kate." "Really?" It wasn't a question. She folded her arms across her chest. "Really?" "You're turning me down for Kate Malone." "Lily, she and I have been together all summer. You know that. Just because I'm going on a trip tomorrow, it doesn't mean..." "Well, you might want to remind Kate that you're together," Lily said, bitterness seeping into her voice. Because I just saw her at Room for Dessert. Oh, he nodded, just praying this conversation would come to an end. Yeah, Lily nodded and ran her tongue over her teeth behind her closed mouth. She was there with Jeff Lucas. She put her hands on her hips. Getting proposed to. At only one other time in Noah's life had he experienced something close to a cardiac episode. When the wigged-out patient back in the city had slid that knife into his side and dragged it downwards, Noah's heart had jolted so powerfully he'd felt sure the knife had actually punctured it, too. The white-hot pain of the knife slicing through his flesh had been nothing compared to the crushing, crippling seizure in his chest. For seconds that had felt like hours, his heart hadn't moved or even fluttered. It had paused in shock, indecisive, unsure if it was worth continuing to beat. When it had lurched again, painfully thudding against his ribs, it had brought with it a fresh wave of blinding pain that throbbed along with each beat, and Noah had known then that he would survive. A shock of pain almost as ferocious stunned him now, tightness circling his chest like an iron band, and for a second he couldn't even draw breath. The room tilted a little, and nausea swam through him. The buzzing in his ears muted every sound except the deafening silence in his chest until, with a jolt of pain and a great, gasping intake of breath, he sat down heavily on the bunk, dazed. Only this time, he wasn't at all sure he was going to survive. He looked up at Lily, who had dropped her bitchy expression and was now staring at him with wide-eyed concern. "Oh my God, are you okay?" "Jeff proposed to Kate," he managed, his voice hoarse. "Yeah, about an hour ago. He got down on one knee and everything. You should see the ring. It's like ginormous. Oh, and get this, he's going to buy Luna Travers' house for her as a wedding present." Lily paused. "But seriously, are you okay? You look like really pale." "Are they still there?" he asked, rising unsteadily to his feet. He wasn't going to ask Lily what Kate's answer had been. He couldn't ask. He couldn't hear that she had accepted him. He knew he simply couldn't bear it. "No," Lily shook her head. "They left soon after." "To go where?" "How should I know? Back to his place to get their freak on, I guess." The room was back to normal now, and his heart, thankfully, had fallen back into a bounding rhythm. He could tell his own vitals were back to normal. His own blood pressure was back up. His own breathing had resumed at a regular rate. His mind was the only thing racing now, and he looked around the room frantically, not even sure what he was looking for. His phone? No, it would have dinged if Kate had sent him a text message. He could message her, though, except where was the phone anyway? Where had he put the friggin' phone? In the truck. He'd left it in the truck. Okay, so, keys. Yes, keys. He needed keys. He patted his pants pocket, felt the rough bumps of his key ring beneath the fabric. Okay, good. Got the keys. Now what? Where did I park the truck? Did I even bring the truck? Doesn't matter. Just get out of here. Go find her, Kincaid. Find her. "I've got to go," he said, ducking past Lily and throwing open the break room door. "If Kate happens to come by here, tell her I've gone to the cabin to find her." The wild grasses were taller now, Kate noticed, as she sat in a small clearing in the wildflower field. All around her, autumn-blooming flowers had replaced their summer cousins. Black-eyed Susans winked at her as the soft breeze whispered through their bright yellow petals. Delicate chicory blossoms danced beneath vibrant lobelias in red and blue. And the odd shoot of wild basil, its pin-cushioned heads wobbling on thick, woolly stems, swayed above them all. It was so quiet she could hear the gentle rustling of the flowers as they slumbered beneath the waning full moon. And every now and then, when the breeze picked up, the scent of sweet alyssum blooms filled the air with a wistful, summery scent. This place had always been her home. For the longest time, she'd insisted she didn't have a home, or roots, or much family to speak of, and if pressed, she never would have said that Cedar Lake, was the one place on earth she felt most like herself. But if she'd learned anything over the past summer, it was this. Home was where you made it. Home was the people you chose to share your life with. It was the sum total of your wins and your losses, your best memories and your most painful moments. The place you ventured out from when you wanted to seek, and the place you hunkered down in when you needed to hide. It was practically a verb. You made your home as much as it made you. She took in a deep breath and felt good letting it out. Really good. The way something was supposed to feel when it was right, when it was meant for you, when it was as if the universe was nodding at you with encouragement and twinkling the stars just that bit brighter to help light your way. This was right. This was good. Her life was going to change, starting now. She smiled to herself as she remembered that silly mantra she had made up. NMFA. No more fucking around. Time to get serious. Get down to business. Get a life. She'd actually made good on that promise to herself, she realized. In just a few months, she'd gone from being a lonely, miserable city girl to this. A woman about to embark on the next chapter of her life. In a town she loved. With big plans for the business she'd only ever done as a hobby. NMFA indeed. A twinge of pain lit up something within her, but it felt more like a memory of pain, a ghost of a feeling more than an urgent wound. She'd probably never forget the bleak despair she'd felt over the past few days, or the utter heartbreak that had left her either on the verge of tears or else completely numb. But this was all part of it, she realized. You couldn't have a happy ending without some angst along the way. You couldn't appreciate the sweetness of the flower unless you'd also felt the bite of its thorn. Besides, it was going to be okay. She could feel it deep down, where her deepest intuition lived. Taking this step would go a long way towards healing her fractured heart. It wasn't the path she'd set out on, exactly, but in some ways it was an even better one. Probably the one she should have considered much earlier. She was about to lay back against her spread-out jacket and gaze up at the stars when the breeze picked up and carried with it the sound of footsteps running along the gravel road. She rose and turned towards the sound. The footfall grew louder, and within moments her eye was drawn to a loud disturbance at the edge of the field. It was Noah, stumbling awkwardly into the flowers, shaking them from their rest and cracking the stems of the unfortunate grasses that he'd had to bat out of his way. "Kate!" he called out, his breathing heavy and short. He bent over and braced his hands on his knees for a moment to catch his breath. He rose up again quickly and began moving towards her, the flowers parting for him as if afraid to get caught beneath his stride. She said nothing as he approached. The butterflies were on standby somewhere down there, humming just to let her know they were still alert and ready to go. It was Noah, after all. She doubted she'd ever be able to look at him without feeling the whoosh of breathlessness that made her feel giddy and light as air. But just now, he didn't look quite so gorgeous. In the bright moonlight, his face, flushed from running, was at odds with the look of fear in his wide, dark eyes. He looked like he actually might be sick. "Noah, are you okay?" Still catching his breath, he shook his head emphatically. "No, not okay. Not okay at all." "What's the matter?" Worry bloomed in her, and for a second she was gripped by the fear that something was terribly wrong. Noah stepped closer, his gaze pinning her. She'd never seen such a look in his eyes, and suddenly she felt like she might be sick. "Noah, tell me, what's happened?" "I know. Jeff proposed to you," he managed, still breathless, wiping the back of his hand across his mouth. "I have to talk to you." "You know?" Kate stared at him. "How could you possibly know?" Then the answer came to her. "Lily. Of course. Lily came to the station and told me," he said, "and I just took off, knowing I had to find you. When you weren't at the cabin, I took a chance that you were here. Did you run all the way from the station? She couldn't hide the incredulity in her voice. The station was at least 3 or 4 miles away, at the bottom of a long, steep hill. Why on earth didn't you take your bike? Sold it, he said. His breath was returning to normal now, and the redness in his cheeks was finally starting to fade to a rosy pink. And I left my phone in the truck, which I forgot is in storage. Listen, Kate, I have to talk to you. Just calm down first, okay? Look at you. You're like those guys who wobble across the finish line at a marathon. You know better, Mr. Paramedic. Take a moment and... No, I have to say this now, he said urgently. He stepped closer, hesitated, moved to take her hands in his, then ran both hands through his hair and blew out a heavy breath. I know this is probably going to sound really lame, but I just needed you to know that I won. Kate blinked. She waited for elaboration, which didn't come. You won what? Our bet, he said, the other day, when we were in bed together, and I bet you that nothing you said could make me want to stop. I won. I didn't want to stop. You did. She stammered, cringing inwardly at that particular memory. We were just kidding around. I know that. No, we weren't, he insisted. I know I wasn't, and I'm pretty sure you weren't either. Look, he said, seeming to lose patience with himself. I'm so sorry that I fucked that whole thing up. It would have been the perfect moment, the perfect time to tell you, and I don't know what the hell was wrong with me. I just froze, and then when you said you wanted better, I was too stupid to realize what you really meant, or I guess what I hope you really meant. And Noah, slow down. No, please, I've got to get this out. His voice had a shaky, breathless edge to it. I'm trying to explain why I never told you sooner. I'm a doofus, I admit it. I can be thick as a plank sometimes, but listen to me. He reached out and this time took her hands in his and held them tight. His gaze on hers was gentle and fierce at the same time. I'm in love with you, Katie May. I always have been. Kate's stomach dropped and she gasped. The butterflies took flight, swarming through her, invading her lungs and making it hard to draw breath. She stepped back to steady herself, and Noah tightened his grip on her hands to help. You, she whispered, faint as the breeze. You... I love you, he said, gazing down at her. His eyes chased hers until they met and locked, and she could feel the urgency in his every word. That night, in my apartment, when you told me you loved me, I wanted to say it back so badly. I was just such a mess that night. I couldn't handle so many emotions at once. It's okay. She wanted to say so much more, but speech was still an effort, and her mind had not yet caught up to the enormity of what he had just told her. But it's no excuse. I've been a complete idiot, and I'm so sorry. I've had to shut off my real emotions for so long doing the job I do. I thought I was coping. I thought it was keeping me even-keeled so I could be a good medic, and shit, maybe it was, but I never realized what it was costing me, or you, what it was costing us. And I'm not just saying this because Mucus proposed, I swear to you, but I am begging you, he emphasized. If you're even considering it, if it's even on your radar, please, don't marry him. Kate's eyes had started tearing up, having had so much practice at it the last few days. She let the tears spill down her cheeks, unable to say a word. Noah was looking at her with such naked vulnerability in his eyes, his voice warm and soft, with just that hint of masculine huskiness to it. And what he was saying, the words she'd been dying to hear from him for 15 years. He loved her. He loved her. She was literally struck dumb. I know he said he would buy Luna's house for you, Noah was saying, and you know I I can't quite afford that, but I do have enough for a down payment, at least. I can cancel the trip and use the money I've put away for Panama. We can get a mortgage, hopefully, and I can get to work fixing up. No, she shook her head, the meaning of his words shaking her out of her butterfly haze. That's not, and I can keep working on the rigs. I'm still young-ish and fairly fit. I got a good 10 years left in me. Hopefully by then I'll have moved up, maybe into management or training or something. But that'll let you take all the time you need to build up your business into whatever you want it to be. Noah, please, let me speak. I will, I promise. I just have to say this, he said, his eyes fearful. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing painfully in his throat. And we can get married. I mean, shit. He squeezed his eyes shut and swore under his breath. Shit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it like that. And I'm sorry this proposal includes the word shit, but what I mean is I'll propose properly and I'll get you a ring and everything. But I mean, just for now, just so you know, I'm up for all the stuff, all the marriage and kids stuff, if you still want that. If you want a big wedding, we'll have to save up. But Noah, Kate said sharply. He started and fell silent. She tried not to laugh. An ebullient, happy laugh was dying to break free within her. But now was not the time. Not with him pouring his heart out to her, looking so serious and saying things that were obviously difficult for him to say. Noah, there's no way I'm letting you cancel Panama and use that money for a mortgage, Kate said, gently laying her hands on his chest. My God, if that isn't the exact opposite of everything you want. I want you. He stepped closer and put his hands around her waist, tentatively, unsure of their welcome in spite of her touch. None of it matters if I lose you. I'll do anything, Katie, please. No. I mean it. No. She said it gently, resisting the overwhelming urge to rise up on her toes and kiss this beautiful, soulful man. He loved her. Pure, warm, giddy joy began to spread throughout her entire body, golden and bright and soaring with all the love she'd been bottling up for half her life. Kate, please, he said, and in the silvery moonlight, she saw that his eyes had teared up too. They roamed over her face, and she could see his struggle. He was searching for something to say, some argument to make, but he was losing hope. Finally, he bent down and pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said quietly. I can't lose you. Well, he says he loves me too, she said. God strike her dead for being playful right now, but she couldn't help it. He deserved a little teasing, didn't he? And she was so damned happy she couldn't contain it. But I really do, he replied. I suck at saying so, but you know I do. He says he's loved me since high school. He hasn't. I have. She said with mock deliberation. He wants to settle down. Here. You don't. He didn't have a quick comeback for that, but as he opened his mouth to try to respond, she could see how much he really wished he did. I know you too well, Kincaid, she said gently, remembering that there was a serious issue here that she couldn't make light of. You want to go off and explore, and you need a break. Even if we love each other, she hesitated, we know better than to try to mold our lives around what the other one wants. Katie, he pleaded, please tell me what I can do. There's got to be something I can do. You can go to Panama. He lowered his head and looked away, but not before a pained expression contorted his features. Within seconds, though, he looked up again, a new idea clearing away his frustration. You can't marry him, he announced. You're already engaged. To me. I am? She asked, allowing a playful note to lift her voice again. It was just too delicious to resist. This is news to me. Our bet, he said. That last chance you had, your last guess. You said marry me, and I said yes. So there, you can't marry Mucus. You're already promised to me. This time, she couldn't help it. She let out a bubbling laugh. Oh, come on. You were saying yes as in, oh, yes, that's it, baby. You weren't agreeing to marry me. Prove it, he said, and the slightest smile began to curve the corner of his mouth. She gazed up into his eyes and sobered a little. She put her hand on the broad expanse of his chest, over the comforting beat of his heart, which was still beating too fast and strong. I want to say something, she said. Be serious for a second. I need to say this. She wished she could follow her own advice. Struggling to pull herself together like an actor who'd ruined too many scenes with guffaws and flubs, she sobered but continued to smile. You once told me that I was too passive, that I let things happen to me, like I was a passenger in my own life. He flinched. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... You were right. She talked over him, hoping to prevent another breathless diatribe about what a doofus he was. I never fully realized it until tonight. When Jeff got down on bended knee in front of a whole crowd of strangers and held out this insane ring, it didn't feel like a serious proposal. It felt so orchestrated, like he was trying to acquire me or pull off some kind of merger. Hope, faint, infant hope, flickered in Noah's eyes. I listened to him rhyme off all these things that he'd learned I wanted, and I felt repulsed. In less than a week, after not seeing me for years, he'd figured out exactly what to say to me to tempt me into marrying him. I still don't even know why he wants to marry me. He doesn't love me, and I'm damn sure I don't love him. I think he's just ticking boxes, frankly, slotting me into the wife position he feels it's time to fill. And I just knew in that moment that you'd been right all along. Not only had I been ticking boxes too, like marriage and kids now that I'm 30, but that I've also been sitting on the side of the road, waiting for a guy to come along and rescue me. I'm ashamed to say it took the wrong one showing up to make me realize what I really want is to rescue myself. Noah's whole being seemed to let go, as if he'd been coiled up like a spring, and now that the tension could finally let go, it was letting go all over his body at once. He let out a breath like he'd been underwater too long. So you said no? Leave it to Lily to leave out that tiny yet utterly enormous detail. Of course I said no. I'm in love with you, doofus. Thank God, he breathed, and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her as she rose up to kiss him, and when their lips met, it was unlike any kiss they'd ever shared. Tender and urgent at the same time, full of meaning and soul and pent-up desire. He moved his mouth over hers softly, gently plying open her lips and deepening the kiss, groaning softly into her mouth as she let out a small sound of pleasure that she just couldn't hold back. One hand slid up her back and into her hair, holding the back of her head in that possessive, caveman-like grip that made her skin flush with goosebumps. He was holding back. She could feel it in the controlled tension of his muscles and the sharp, shallow breaths he stole between the motion of their lips. He was all but trembling with it, the twin desires of being gently tender and of ravaging her with his mouth and hands and body. The mixture was a decadent, indulgent, sumptuous kiss, sparking with electricity every time his tongue touched hers, swelling her heart every time he groaned softly and splayed his other hand gently over the small of her back. She finally broke the kiss out of a need for air and dropped back down to the soles of her feet with a whoosh of breath from her lungs. Her arms had wound their way around his upper back, since she couldn't quite reach his neck, and for a moment she thought he might hoist her up to his level so the kissing could go on. But what he did was just as good. So, he murmured, pulling her closer, nuzzling against her cheek. Can I assume rescuing yourself involves marrying me and buying Luna's house together? She turned her head and found his lips, giving him a lingering, sensual kiss before lifting away to find his eyes. No, she whispered. He lifted his head and blinked. No? Afraid not. The poor man looked utterly confused. No, meaning you don't want to buy Luna's house, or... He trailed off, and there was a hint of concern in that unfinished sentence. I've been sitting here for a while, thinking, trying to work up the courage to go down to the station and explain, she said, watching his eyes glittering in the moonlight. I didn't know if you'd even want to talk to me, considering how awful I was to you the other day. But I knew I had to see you, that I had to make things right. I was going to go down there and tell you my plan, and pray you'd at least listen. I'll always listen, he said, his eyes glowing softer and sweeter. And you don't have to make anything right. I'm the one who messed up. No, we both did, she insisted. I should have talked to you about this a long time ago. About what? He asked, cupping her cheek and caressing her skin with his thumb. Your plan? She drew in a steadying breath. I'm going to ask Luna if I can buy her house myself. I've got my own money for the down payment, and if she agrees, I'm going to move in with her, so I can be there for her when she needs me. Oh, wow, he breathed out. Kate, that's awesome. So while I sincerely appreciate your offer, and I really do, you have no idea what it means to me. I don't want anyone buying me any houses or bankrolling my business. I'm quite happy to do that myself. He looked pleasantly surprised and suitably impressed. I guess I shouldn't have expected anything less from you. You're amazing. Have I told you that? You can start now, she grinned. Done. And what about the other thing? He smiled and bit his bottom lip. The getting married thing? Is that a no, too? That's a no for now, she said, because for now, you're going to Panama. That's the second part of my plan, the part you'll agree with, I hope. You're going to go and do what you've been dying to do since you were a teenager, and you're going to call me when you can and send me photos now and then, but you're going to go. And you're going to love every second of it. And when you want to come back, if you want to come back, she added cautiously, to which he started to protest, then if you want to, you can move in with me and we'll talk about it then. How does that sound? He gazed at her for a moment, confusion and surprise and pure delight playing across his face. Katie, he said at length, are you sure this is what you want? Really? Absolutely. I was just rehearsing my little speech in my head when you came crashing through the field. She gestured, laughing. If our timing had been a little better, I would have met you coming up the road. I'm just overwhelmed, he said, shaking his head in wonder. He wiped at his eyes and blinked to clear them, smiling down at her with pure love. I never thought... I'd never want you to give up on something you want. No, I want you. I love you. I've always loved you. Your happiness means more to me than anything. And I'm not giving up anything. Marriage can wait, but our life together can't. And if this is what our life together is going to look like for the next few months or years or whatever, then this is what it will be. This is what we will be. He let out a little sound, somewhere between a groan of relief and a huff of surprise. My God, baby, you have no idea. Baby, she repeated, playfully savoring the word. I think I like that. You could come with me, he offered, as if giving her one last chance to change the terms. But before she could answer, he lowered his head towards her for another slow, sensual kiss. When their lips parted, he let out a breath that seemed to loosen something within him, a weight that had been pressing on him, slowly easing up and finally letting him draw sweet air. I never offered before because it didn't occur to me that you might actually want to come along. But if you want to come with me, she shook her head. I'm going to be busy with the house, and Luna, and Zuzu's petals. Besides, you need to do this for yourself. You know you do. You have to be free from everything here. You have to live the kind of life you always wanted. Unencumbered, carefree, you against the world. I am encumbered in the best way, he said softly. It's not just me against the world anymore, Malone. And I'll be here, Kincaid, she whispered back, waiting for you when you want to come home. Katie, he said, and now his eyes were wet with unspilled tears. I don't know what to say. I never know what to say, that's no surprise. He let out a self-deprecating laugh. But seriously, I'm just lost for words. Do you love me? She asked. God, yes. That's all I've ever really wanted. He scooped her up and lowered them both to the ground, laying her back on her coat beneath the sheltering stems of the wildflowers. He gazed down at her and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She turned to kiss the tender heart of his palm. He smiled such a beautiful, glowing smile that her heart felt the most perfect peace she'd ever known. By the way, I'm definitely coming back, he whispered. Wild horses and all that. Good, she said, wrinkling her nose at him. Now why don't we pick up where we left off the other day, when I so rudely interrupted you? Noah and Kate, Chapter 40. 8 weeks later. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Cheers and applause erupted from the crowd of guests seated in curved rows around the floral archway beneath which the minister and the newly married couple stood. The sun was shining, brightening the already vivid oranges and reds of the trees that dotted this little parquet by the lake. The cozy scents of fall wafted along on the cool autumn breeze, the loamy smell of leaves underfoot and fireplaces warming up for the first time that year, the cedary aroma of the trees that sheltered this little lake, the fragrant punch of Carlino's kitchen revving up the deep fryers, which was only fitting since Carlino was providing the food. Burgers and fries may not have been the most traditional of wedding feasts, but then the newlyweds weren't exactly the most traditional bride and groom. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you, the minister beamed, Mr. and Mrs. Bill Peterson. Mrs. J, or rather Mrs. Peterson now, laughed happily at the crowd, and even Bill wore a smile that Kate hadn't known he was capable of. The two of them, gussied up in rented finery, leaned towards each other and pressed their lips together in a chaste but adorable smooch that sent the Agathas, seated on the bride's side, and even the Arthurs, taking up a whole row on the groom's side, into whoops and cheers of approval. "Throw the bouquet, Audrey!" Mrs. Heath cupped her hands around her mouth and called out. "Not now, Irene," Mrs. Peterson called back. "We gotta wait till the reception. Your fingers will be all greasy." Mrs. Young joined in. "Come on, throw it now." "Where's the rice?" Mrs. Peterson asked. "We gotta do the rice throwing before I can throw the bouquet." "Rice is for fertility," one of the Arthurs piped up. "Are you hoping he'll put a bun in your oven, Audrey?" "For cripe's sake, no," Bill protested. "Throw the damn bouquet, woman." Everyone laughed, and the new bride gamely turned around and flung the small bouquet of apple blossoms and gardenias, proudly provided by Zuzu's Petals garden, over her shoulder. It sailed over the heads of all the Agathas, each of whom ducked and scrambled out of the way like it was an incoming grenade. It landed with a plop in the middle of Paige's lap. Kate turned to look at her friend, sitting beside her. "Well, well, well." "Yeah, right," groused Paige, smiling, holding the bouquet aloft as everyone clapped. Callum, sitting beside Paige, was clapping harder than anyone. Luna, to Kate's right, smiled a pursed lip, knowing smile, and winked at Kate. "Burgers and fries on us. Come on, everybody," Mrs. Peterson trumpeted, leading the charge up the aisle and dragging her new husband behind her. Bill's got to eat before 6. He just took his insulin shot. Let's go. Kate, Paige, Callum, and Luna let the other guests rise from their seats, some stiffly with groaning effort, some spryly, like they still had their own hips and knees. Everyone's eyes zeroed in on Carlino's at the top of the gentle slope. The ragtag group of guests wound their way up the path towards the restaurant, as the minister followed slowly, bringing up the rear. He paused by their row and offered Luna his arm in a gentlemanly gesture that made her blush. She slipped her thin arm into the crook of his elbow and allowed him to escort her. "I never saw this coming, did you?" Paige asked, shaking her head and laughing as she watched the procession. "Can't say I did," Kate laughed. "When I got the invitation, I thought it was a joke." "Every time they met, they got into an argument about something," Paige went on. "You saw them. They were always at each other's throats." "I guess opposites attract," Kate shrugged. "And really, it would take someone like Mrs. J to go toe-to-toe with someone like Bill. Their marriage is going to be anything but boring." "I still can't quite believe they got married," said Paige. "I didn't believe it till Bill invited me to his bachelor party," Callum put in. "Did you go?" Paige turned to him, incredulous. "I was working. Thank God." He laughed. "I can't even imagine what a 75-year-old bachelor's party would look like." "Knowing Bill, he probably just sat around with his friends and complained," Kate said wryly. "Mrs. J's shower was a hoot, though," Paige said. "Apart from the lingerie she got. I swear Mrs. Heath is on hormone replacement or something. Her mind is in the gutter lately." Kate laughed and stood, smoothing out the wrinkles in her flowery summer dress. Callum and Paige rose, and the three of them began making their way up the hill. "Oh, and I have news." Paige put a hand on Kate's arm, her eyes wide and sparkly with excitement. "News or gossip?" "Same thing. Listen, you'll never guess," Paige said. "This is crazy, but remember how after that spectacle with Jeff at Room for Dessert? God, I wish I'd been there. Remember how he took off and we all kind of figured he went back to Boston? I can't say I've given his whereabouts much thought, but okay, go on," said Kate, bumping into her friend's arm companionably as they walked. "You're going to love this. Apparently, all this time, he's been in Dunmore." "Well, he has a new business there," Kate said, "so it's not that big a leap." "Yeah, but," Paige paused dramatically, "he hasn't been alone. Turns out, Lily stepped up to console him." "No," Kate said. "You're kidding. And it gets better. They both stopped by the store yesterday. They're engaged." Kate stopped walking and stared at Paige. "You can't be serious. Did that ring he proposed to you with have a diamond the size of a golf ball? And these little flowery diamond thingies around the band?" "Oh my God, he didn't." "Oh my God, he did. They came in, Lily flashing it all over the place, telling everyone their amazing news. And you know what I immediately thought of? That I dodged the mother of all bullets." Paige laughed. "Oh, that's a given. No, think about it. I'm standing in a shop called Lizzie and Fitz, named after my grandfather's favorite book, and I suddenly thought, this is just like Mr. Collins after Lizzie rejects his proposal." Kate laughed, and then gets engaged to Charlotte a few days later. "Yes," Paige triumphed, "to Charlotte Lucas. I mean, it was just too surreal." Callum shook his head and smiled. "What is it with that book? I might have to read this thing just to know what all the fuss is about." "Oh, you have to read it," Paige replied, touching his arm the way she'd touched Kate's. "Okay." "You just have to," she went on. "Seriously, it's everything." "Okay," he reiterated, more convincingly this time, smiling at Paige's earnest expression. "I'll come by the shop and buy a copy." Kate looked away to hide a smile. Serious Ben and Luna vibes, she thought happily. If only Paige knew the story, she might be more inclined to follow in their footsteps, but make the right decision where they hadn't. Luna needed a fire lit under her, Kate decided, to tell Paige about her great love story with Ben. Or maybe it was better that she didn't. Maybe it would be better to let Paige and Callum read Pride and Prejudice together and fall in love over it, in true Kincaid style. Well, I get why Charlotte Lucas married Mr. Collins, Kate said, but why would Lily want to marry anybody, let alone Jeff? His money, Paige said, emphasizing both syllables. He's seriously loaded, right? And I bet she's thinking that Mucus must still know some celebrities from his time with his ex. Kate snorted too loudly with unexpected laughter. You're calling him Mucus, too? What? It's catchy, Paige shrugged. And it fits. And for that matter, why would he want to marry her, of all people? Boobs, said Callum, squinting into the distance like Clint Eastwood. Men are simple creatures. Paige and Kate thought about this and slowly nodded. Yeah, they could see that. Lily did have what most men in town would describe as a killer rack. But marriage? Kate shook her head. I don't know. I guess maybe she's on the rebound, still smarting from Noah's rejection. Yeah, how you've held back from kicking her ass, I'll never know, Paige said, her brow furrowing. You're a better woman than me, that's for sure. You know she didn't tell him that you'd said no? Her eyes went wide with outrage. Oh, I know. Well, even if I'm invited, I'm not going to the wedding, Paige announced with a delightful upturn of her chin. I don't think any of us will be invited, Kate said wryly. At least I hope not. Oh, we should all crash it for sure, Callum said. I bet we could convince Noah to streak through the reception. Knowing my brother, you won't need to twist his arm. As they continued their leisurely ramble up the slope, the aroma of deep-fried everything from Carlino's grew stronger and heavier, as if the very air was laden with grease. Do you think they'd mind if I skipped the dinner? Kate wondered out loud. I can't say I'm in the mood for onion rings at the moment. I'm sure they wouldn't mind at all, Paige said. Callum and I are skipping it. We're going to make sure the new space is all set up for the reception. Oh, that reminds me. She snapped her fingers and stopped Kate with a hand on her arm again. Paige was very touchy-feely today, Kate thought, and noticeably bubblier than normal. Can I ask you a giant favor? You want me to help out with the tables and chairs? Paige shook her head. No. This is for the shop. I forgot all about it till this morning. There's a special client coming in later today for a first edition of William Faulkner, but it totally slipped my mind, and I forgot to grab it after the bridal shower. Would you be an angel and go get it from the safe? Sure, Kate said. Just text me the combination. You're a lifesaver. Paige hugged her. Even her embrace was tighter than usual, somehow more heartfelt and longer than her typically lingering hugs. It's no big deal, Kate laughed and squeezed her back. You go do your thing and I'll be back in time for the reception. Kate left Paige and Callum to continue up the hill towards Carlino's and crossed the park to her car. The seat and steering wheel were pleasantly warm from the late afternoon sun, and she cranked down the window to enjoy the breeze as she made her way up the hill. Cedar Lake sparkled below her as she drove, and the trees that lined the far shore looked like cozy balls of red and orange yarn, all huddled together with the odd yellow or green one nestled in amongst them. The sun, still golden and bright, lounged a little lower in the sky these days, its rays glinting off the riggings of the few boats left in the marina and casting long shadows along the pier. It would set soon, dipping below the horizon in a watercolor wash of red gold and orange. She pulled up to the cabin and shut off the car. She sat still for a moment, listening to the ticking of the engine and the call of songbirds in amongst the trees. This place, this ramshackle old place, would always hold such a special spot in her heart. The best summers of her childhood had passed here, and the most exciting times of her teenage years, those awkward years of blooming into womanhood with the acute awareness of Noah becoming a man. And, of course, Noah climbing into that bottom bunk with her on their birthday. That first, tentative, erotically charged kiss, and all the ones that followed it. Making love in almost every room, and under the stars, and in the wildflower field up the road. She couldn't help but send up a thankful prayer to Ben Kincaid for refusing to sell this place. Her life now simply wouldn't have unfolded the way it did if he had. The past 2 months certainly had been challenging, as she'd known they would be. She'd seen Noah off at the airport with a lingering kiss, a huge smile and a heartfelt hug, and waved enthusiastically as he disappeared down the jet bridge. Then she'd turned to Paige and burst into tears, which of course had made Paige burst into tears, and Callum had had to drive them both home and listen to their sniffles and blown noses and bouts of weeping along the way. But then things got a bit easier. That night, Noah had video called to show her his new digs and introduce her to some of the other volunteers, and he'd looked radiantly, effusively happy. He'd also heaped so much love and gratitude on her she'd cried all over again. Happy tears this time. Good tears. He'd made good on his promise, too, calling or texting her every day, sharing his adventures and work projects with her, falling asleep with her at night, both of their phones tucked beneath their ears as they drifted off. The cell phone bill was astronomical, but she didn't care, and neither did he. She was so proud of him. He sent videos of a children's vaccination clinic he was helping to run, and the smiling, often bewildered faces of the little kids who crowded around him were heartbreakingly sweet. Other videos showed the clinic being built, piece by piece, first the concrete pad and then the wooden frames, the plumbing, the electrics, things this village had never had before. But the most surprising and impressive of all was a video of Noah conversing happily with a mother and her child in Spanish. For someone who had failed Spanish and hadn't done much better under her tutelage, he was beginning to sound like a native. That night on the phone, he had spoken to her in his new language, although that conversation had involved a slightly spicier vocabulary than he used with his patients. God, she missed him. Viscerally. At night, she'd hug her pillow to her chest and imagine it was him, going over the contours of his body in her mind. Sometimes she had a good cry about it, when the night was long and she was particularly unhappy about wishing him good night over the phone and hanging up. But mostly, she was simply proud. Proud of him for taking the plunge and following his dream. Proud of herself for insisting he do it. And at least she wasn't entirely alone. She'd put her idea to Luna, whose eyes had lit up and who had actually shed a few tears of her own at the prospect. The sale had gone through smoothly, and Kate had moved in a little more than 4 weeks after Noah had left. She and Luna had chattered like girls at a sleepover, as Kate had made over one of the bedrooms upstairs. And after another couple of weeks, Zuzu's Petals had its official office space and seed library spread out across the 3rd floor. She still had Paige, too, of course, who shared the pain of Noah's absence, if in an entirely different way. And now that she knew why she hadn't seen or heard from Jeff or Lily since that night, she felt an odd sense of relief. Noah had laughingly told her about Lily's clumsy attempt at seduction, and Kate felt it best to avoid seeing her at all costs, lest something truly unfortunate happened, like a knockdown, drag-out, hair-pulling brawl, for instance. Now that Noah was hers, really, truly hers, she'd gone all cave woman, it seemed. Love could do that to a person, after all. It could bring out claws you didn't even know you had. She dug the keys out of her purse and let herself into the cabin, having to push the door a little harder than usual due to the late summer humidity that had made the old wood swell. A slightly musty fug hit her when she stepped inside, but it was familiar and homey and not at all unpleasant. She dropped her keys on the kitchen counter and found her phone in the bottom of her purse. She was expecting a text from Paige with the combination to the safe, but when she checked the lock screen, it was blank. Paige was probably fussing with all the tables and chairs in the new space, which she was going to call the assembly room. It may have been only the size of an erstwhile ladies' wear shop, and at the moment it was mid-renovation and looked more like an unfinished basement than a reception room. But Mrs. Peterson had insisted that this was where she wanted the reception. Today would be the first official event Paige had ever hosted, and she was probably nervous, even if it was only the Petersons she had to impress. Or maybe working so closely with Callum lately had sparked a little fire in her friend. They had been spending part of almost every day together, alone in that little space, probably joking and laughing as they tore old things down and built new things up. Kate imagined a movie montage-style paintbrush fight that resolved only with a tumble and an embrace and a long-anticipated paint-spattered kiss. But Paige would have told her if she and Callum had grown closer, wouldn't she? Maybe that's why Paige had been acting a little strange today, like she was bursting with some small, precious secret she was just dying to let out. Kate left her phone out on the counter and wandered into the living room area, gazing out the window towards the dazzling lake. The memory of Noah tossing her into the water came to mind, which led to the decidedly more enjoyable memory of their moonlit skinny dip in the cove along the far shore. She'd never be able to look at this lake again without thinking some salacious thought or other about Noah, and somehow this idea didn't bother her at all. She began to turn back to check her phone again when she saw it. Out of the corner of her eye, a flash of bright pink in the middle of the coffee table. Her diary. She frowned, unsure for a moment of what she was seeing. What was her old diary doing here? Had Paige found it after she'd moved over to Luna's and left it here for her to pick up? No, that didn't seem right. Paige would have said something. But she was sure she had packed it up along with her books and other belongings. Hadn't she? The last time she'd seen it had been that morning on the couch with Noah, when he'd confessed so wretchedly to having read it. She remembered throwing it to him, and then... A tingle began to crawl up the back of her neck, although at that moment she dared not imagine why her spidey sense was suddenly beginning to hum. With her heart pounding, she sat down on the couch and picked up the diary. The little blue ribbon was wedged between the pages near the end. With trembling fingers, she flipped to that page. Personal diary of Noah J. Kincaid. Everyone, except Katie Malone, keep out. Kate gasped, staring at the familiar masculine handwriting filling the page. Her heart began to beat faster and her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes jumped to the first paragraph. I'm not super good at writing. I just had to get this down. I've been thinking about this girl called Katie a lot. She's my sister's best friend. She's really nice and smart, and she tried her best to help me with Spanish, but no entendí nada. I didn't really care. I just wanted to be around her. She's gorgeous, too. I get all tongue-tied around her and do stupid stuff. I mean, I don't know what the hell I'm thinking most of the time. I should just tell her, right? Right? Not this guy. Like an idiot, I end up doing things to make her notice me, like dancing with what's-her-face. What is her face, anyway? I don't have the foggiest idea who that was. Or else throwing Lily in the lake. But that was only because, I admit it, I wanted to feel her boobs. That's all. Just wanted to feel her boobs. Kate laughed out loud, a snuffling, snotty laugh, because somehow she was now crying too. Callum had nailed it with the boobs thing. And that was only because I couldn't exactly feel Katie's boobs, now could I? Even though I'm pretty sure she has spectacular boobs. Drool-worthy boobs. Boobs a man could sell his soul for. Anyway, I no longer have any interest in any part of Lily's anatomy. Sorry, my pen ran out. Kate's the kind of girl I want to protect. Like if she and my stupid sister got up on the roof and danced around like a couple of lunatics, I'd probably feel my scrotum tighten up into my body and my stomach lurch like I was going to hurl. Or like if she was going on a date with some jackass or something, I'd show up there just to keep an eye on her and make sure the guy didn't try anything. I'd show up at every date she had, like some psycho stalker or something. Though not really. For real, I'm just kidding. Just to scare the crap out of the guys. Because she's too nice and too sweet to kick losers to the curb. I'd probably find a way to get naked around her, too. Just to let her get a good long look at the merchandise. Again, kidding. I like being naked, sue me. And I bet if I needed her, if I had a really terrible shit show of a day, she'd be there to protect me. That's how great she is. That and lots of other stuff I love about her is how I know she's the one. She and I were born on the same day, after all. That has to mean something. Okay, so Paige and I were born on the same day too, but you know what I mean. I hope someday I get to tell her. Even if I go off on great adventures, I know my home is always going to be wherever she is. And by the way, just vis-a-vis a previous entry, If I ever get Katie alone in a field of wildflowers at night, I'm going to kiss her and feel her up and make love to her if she'll let me, and I definitely won't forget to shout out, I love Katie Malone, because how lame would that be? A perfect opportunity like that. How could I live with myself if I forgot to holler that out and make her day? What kind of a lame-ass doofus would forget something like that? Sorry. So in short, if you're reading this, Kate, know this. I love you more than anything on earth. See, I used a colon properly. You taught me that. And let me shout it here, at least, and try to redeem myself a little. I love Katie Mae Malone, and I always, always, always will. Kate held the open book to her chest and squeezed her eyes shut as the tears ran down her face. Happy, snotty, breath-hitching tears. She closed her eyes tight to preserve this exact moment in memory. His words, in his hand, had captured his spirit so perfectly that she could practically feel him there with her, pressed against her heart. There was no client, no Faulkner in the safe. There was just this wonderful, heartwarming gesture left by Noah and orchestrated by Paige and her little ruse. She needed to call Paige now and ask her all about it. Kate rose and turned towards the kitchen to grab her phone. She wanted to hear every little detail of how the two of them had arranged it, how they had... The diary fell from her hands and she gasped. Noah. Leaning casually against the doorframe, his arms folded across his broad chest, wearing the biggest smile she had ever seen. Hey, Malone. Oh, my God! She all but leapt over the sofa to get to him and flew into his arms with such force that he stumbled backwards in the attempt to catch her, and they both crashed against the wall. My God, baby, what are you doing here? She didn't give him a chance to answer. Through his surprise and laughter, he tried to talk, but she planted kisses all over his face and mouth before settling into a long, deep, passionate kiss, and then there was no need to talk. He kissed her back with equal enthusiasm, until her curiosity won out and she broke the kiss, pulling back from him to get a good look at him, as if not quite sure he was real. He was tanned, his hair sun-lightened and a bit longer, and he looked like he'd either lost some weight or put on muscle or a bit of both. A few freckles even dusted his nose and cheeks. He was wearing a tight black t-shirt and faded blue jeans, almost exactly like he had been that first day she'd seen him, right here in this cabin, 5 months ago now. Did you get some time off? She asked, running her hands over his broader, more defined shoulders. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I wanted to surprise you, he said, his eyes twinkling with merriment. He held her waist and beamed down at her, as though content to just look at her for hours. Did you like my diary entry? Oh, God, my love, she cooed, feeling fresh tears gathering. That was the most beautiful, thoughtful thing I could ever imagine. Well, I'm glad it didn't take you 15 years to find it, he joked. Paige was in on it, right? She knows you're home? She knows. So why aren't you... I mean, the Peterson wedding and everything, everybody's down at the new space for the reception. Why did you want to come up here to see me? He raised a lascivious eyebrow at her. You can't think of a reason I'd want to be alone with you? She closed her eyes and laughed. Of course. Duh. But I don't live here anymore. You could have come over to Luna's. That's where I live now. I could have, he said, his voice low and husky. Except this place is pretty special to us. We've made some incredible memories here. You could say that we even started here, like 20 years ago, when you first began showing up every summer. I figured this was the best place, the only proper place, to ask. And he slowly lowered himself to one knee and took her hand in his. Katie Mae, my love, will you marry me? Kate stared down at him in shock. Noah, she whispered, her eyes spilling over with more tears. If she didn't get some water soon, she was going to dehydrate with all this crying. Oh, Noah. He reached into the back pocket of his jeans and held out a delicate gold ring with a cluster of small diamonds arranged in an antique filigreed setting. It was intricate and exquisitely beautiful, and she let out a gasp as he began to slide it onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. "This is so beautiful," she said, awestruck. "It's perfect, Noah. It's absolutely perfect. I don't know what to say." "Say yes." She tore her eyes away from the ring and met his gaze, worry creasing her brow. "But, honey, I don't understand. You're supposed to be in Panama for another month anyway. Are you sure you want to—" "I left early," he said, those magical eyes twinkling again. "The clinic was finished and up and running, and I just couldn't wait another second to be with you again. I've missed you so damn much, Katie. So much it actually hurt." "So you're home?" Her voice came out as a parched whisper. "You're really home? For good?" "You're my home. So yes, I'm home. Now will you answer me, or are you going to make me blow my knee out kneeling on these old floorboards?" "Oh, God, yes," she laughed, moving to help him straighten up. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." He swept her up and swung her around, letting out an excited whoop as if he hadn't been sure of what her answer would be, as if he didn't know with every fiber of his being that there was only one answer she would give. "I love you so much." He set her down on her feet and kissed her, sliding one hand into her hair and pulling her closer to him with the other. After 2 months apart, he tasted particularly delicious, his soft lips moving against hers, his tongue tangling with hers and sending sparks throughout her whole body. He slowly ended the kiss and rested his forehead against hers. "I hope you know how much." "Baby, I love you too," she said, wiping away her tears and letting the joyous butterflies do their thing. "I'm just in shock. I never expected—" I know, he said. "I thought I wanted to be gone for 3 months, or maybe more. And I loved my time there. I really, really did. It was an incredible experience. There's another 2-week project starting up in March in Ecuador. I might sign on for that, if we both agree. But I've been doing a lot of thinking over these past 2 months, and I figured out what I really want. I want our home, Kate. I want us to put down roots here. I want to get into training new medics and teaching, maybe at Page's new space. I want to go volunteering now and then, if I feel like it, and I want you to come with me, if you feel like it. But most of all, honey, I want you. I want our life together, and I want it to start now." "Who are you, and what have you done with my boyfriend?" She laughed, and it was another snotty, snuffly laugh, but she didn't care. "Fiancé," he corrected, grinning. A thought occurred to her. "But you said you were burnt out on paramedicine. You were torn up by it. Are you sure you want to keep doing that?" "I needed a break," he said. "And you're right. I don't want to work ambulance anymore. But, I've remembered why I wanted to become a medic in the first place. I want to help people. I want to help educate them on what to do if someone around them needs help. I want to train future medics to bring their best to every call. There's no better place to do that than right here, with you and some kids to come home to." He winked over that last line, and she swore her ovaries woke up and started doing the cha-cha. "You've gone full George Bailey," she declared, throwing her arms around him. "You're back in Bedford Falls, kissing the broken newel post and singing Christmas carols." "Hey, the man was right," Noah shrugged, scooping her up and heading towards the stairs up to the loft bedroom. "It really is a wonderful, wonderful life." The end.